When your bully becomes your kidnapper. The Liam Selejko betrayal. The Liam Selejko bombshell. When the past becomes the present. Here's where things get absolutely gut-wrenching. Rafe's investigation into the kidnapping has led him straight to Liam Selejko, and I need you to understand the psychological horror of what's unfolding here. This isn't just some random accomplice being exposed. Liam was Theo's childhood bully. Let that sink in for a moment. Imagine being Theo Carver. You're a young man on the autism spectrum who's already faced more challenges than most people encounter in a lifetime. You were shot, went through agonizing rehabilitation, fought your way back to independence. And now you discover that one of the people responsible for your recent kidnapping trauma is the same person who tormented you as a vulnerable child. The same person who made your formative years miserable has now violated your sense of safety as an adult. This is the kind of violation that goes beyond physical harm. This strikes at the very core of psychological security. For Theo, this revelation means that the monsters from his past never really went away. They just evolved, got more sophisticated, more dangerous. The bully who once pushed him around on the playground graduated to orchestrating his kidnapping. That's not just criminal, that's deeply, disturbingly personal. What fascinates me from a storytelling perspective is how this creates layers of trauma. Theo isn't just recovering from a recent kidnapping. He's now forced to confront childhood wounds he probably thought he'd moved past. Every coping mechanism he developed, every bit of progress he made in therapy, every moment of feeling safe of it, gets called into question. Because if Liam could do this, who else from his past might resurface with malicious intent? Abe's devastating realization. Now let's talk about Abe Carver, because honestly, my heart breaks for this man. Abe has been enthusiastically helping Liam recently. Let me repeat that, enthusiastically helping. Not just tolerating him, not giving him the chance, he actively, energetically supporting this person who turns out to have been involved in kidnapping his son. The show is telling us something crucial here. We need to understand their history to grasp the full weight of this betrayal. So let me theorize what likely happened. Abe, being the good-hearted, redemption-believing person he is, probably saw Liam as someone who made childhood mistakes and deserved a second chance. Maybe Liam came to him with apologies, with a story about how he'd changed, how he regretted bullying Theo, how he wanted to make amends. And Abe, ever the compassionate public servant who believes in rehabilitation and growth, probably embraced this narrative. He likely saw helping Liam as an act of forgiveness, as modeling for Theo how to move past childhood hurt. He might have even thought he was doing something noble, showing that people can change, that we shouldn't be forever defined by our worst moments. The irony is absolutely devastating. While Abe was busy being the bigger person, extending grace and opportunities to Liam, this same person was plotting against his family. Every moment of kindness Abe showed was being exploited. Every trust extended was being weaponized. Every attempt at redemption was actually a cover for something far more sinister. I keep thinking about how Abe must feel right now. The confusion mentioned in the spoilers probably doesn't even begin to cover it. This is a man who's dedicated his life to justice, to believing in the system, to second chances. And now he has to confront that his good nature was manipulated, that his son suffered because of his willingness to see the best in people. Here's what makes this even more complicated. Abe's instinct to help Liam wasn't wrong in principle. We should believe in redemption. We should give people chances to grow. But Salem has taught us over and over that trust is a weapon that can be turned against you. Abe's confusion likely stems from this cognitive dissonance. How does he reconcile his values with the evidence that those values led to his son's harm? The psychology of the bully turned kidnapper. Let's dig into Liam's character for a moment, because this is where things get really interesting from a psychological standpoint. Bullies don't typically graduate to kidnapping without a specific pathology. What was it about Theo specifically that made Liam target him both as a child and as an adult? I have a theory, and it's not pretty. Bullies often target those they perceive as vulnerable, but also those they envy in some way. Theo, despite his challenges, has something Liam never did: a loving, supportive family with real standing in the community. Abe Carver is respected, accomplished, represents everything good about public service. The Carver family name means something in Salem. Liam's childhood bullying might have been rooted in resentment of what Theo had. And now, as an adult, that resentment has metastasized into something far more dangerous. The kidnapping wasn't just about whatever larger plot was in play. I'm convinced there was a personal satisfaction for Liam in once again proving he had power over Theo. In demonstrating that despite everything Theo had overcome, he could still be made helpless. This also raises disturbing questions about Liam's recent interactions with the Carver family. When he was accepting Abe's help, was he enjoying the deception? Was there a sick thrill in being welcomed by the family of his victim? Some offenders get a particular satisfaction from hiding in plain sight, from being trusted by those they intend to harm. The psychological term is duping delight, the pleasure derived from successfully fooling others. What we're seeing isn't just a crime story. It's a case study in how predators groom their environment. Liam didn't just wake up one day and decide to kidnap Theo. He likely spent months, maybe years, positioning himself to gain access, trust, and opportunity. Every conversation with Abe was reconnaissance. Every act of seeming remorse was manipulation. The kidnapping that happened last week. The timing here is crucial. This kidnapping is recent. It happened last week in the show's timeline, which means Theo's trauma is raw, immediate, and unprocessed. He hasn't had time to even begin healing from the kidnapping itself, let alone deal with the revelation about who was behind it. I'm thinking about the psychological concept of shattered assumptions. When we experience trauma, our fundamental beliefs about the world get challenged. We might start believing the world is dangerous, that people can't be trusted, that safety is an illusion. Now imagine discovering that your trauma was orchestrated by someone from your past who already broke your sense of security once before. It's like experiencing the same violation twice, across two different timelines of your life. For Theo, this creates what therapists call complex trauma-layered traumatic experiences that compound each other. He can't process the recent kidnapping without it triggering memories of childhood bullying. He can't think about Liam the childhood bully without those memories being colored by the knowledge that this same person kidnapped him. The past and present become tangled in a way that makes healing exponentially more difficult. And here's what really gets me. Theo is going to have to testify, probably face Liam in court, confront him about both the kidnapping and potentially the childhood bullying. That's going to require him to be strong in a way that nobody should have to be. He'll need to stand up to his bully, not as a vulnerable child, but as an adult survivor, which is its own kind of psychological mountain to climb. Abe's shock and what comes next. The spoilers tell us Abe is very shocked by this revelation, and I think shocked might be the understatement of the year. This is the kind of discovery that makes you question everything. Every conversation with Liam is now recontextualized. Every moment of seeming progress or redemption becomes suspect. Every time Abe advocated for Liam to others, he was unknowingly advocating for someone actively plotting against his family. I predict we're going to see Abe go through several emotional phases. First, the shock and disbelief. Surely, there's been a mistake. Surely the evidence is wrong. Then comes the guilt. How did he miss this? How could he have been so blind? Why didn't he protect Theo better? Then the anger at Liam for the betrayal, at himself for being fooled, at the situation for being so impossibly cruel. But here's what I'm most interested in watching. How does this affect Abe's worldview? Does he become more cynical, less willing to extend second chances? Does he pull back from his community involvement out of fear that his judgment is compromised? Or does he find a way to maintain his values while also being more discerning about who deserves his trust? There's also the question of how this impacts his relationship with Theo. Does Theo blame his father for helping Liam? That would be unfair, but also psychologically understandable. We're hurt, we often lash out at those closest to us. Abe might face resentment from the one person whose opinion matters most to him. The Stefano revelation, death finally confirmed. Now we shift gears to what might be the biggest storyline of the year. Stefano Demera is confirmed dead. Not missing, not in hiding, not about to make another miraculous return. Actually, definitively, permanently dead. His skeleton has been found and identified in the crypt. Let me be honest with you. I didn't think the show would ever commit to this. Stefano has been Salem's ultimate wild card, the character who could always come back regardless of how impossible it seemed. He's died so many times that his returns became part of the show's mythology. The phoenix always rises. Except this time, he doesn't. When Rafa delivers this news to the Demera mansion, I imagine the room becomes a vacuum. EJ learning his father is truly gone and not strategically absent, not faking his death for some elaborate plan, but actually decedeth. It's the end of an era. EJ's entire identity has been constructed around being Stefano's son, around living up to or rebelling against that legacy. What does he become when the person he's been defined by is confirmed gone forever? But here's what's eating at me. Why is his skeleton in that crypt? Who put him there? When did he actually die? Because the Demera family didn't know about this, which means someone concealed his death and burial. That's not just unusual, it's deeply suspicious. In Salem, bodies don't end up in crypts by accident. I have a working theory that Stefano's death is connected to recent events in ways we haven't begun to understand. Maybe he was killed because he knew something or possessed something that made him dangerous. Maybe his death was meant to send a message or clear the way for someone else's power grab. The timing of this discovery, happening simultaneously with the kidnapping revelations, can't be coincidental. Chad's protective instinct and its problems. Chad deciding to withhold Stefano's death from Theo is complicated, and I have mixed feelings about it. On one hand, I understand his thinking. Theo is already dealing with kidnapping trauma, and now the Liam revelation. Adding the death of his grandfather to that emotional pile seems cruel. Chad probably sees himself as giving Theo space to heal before delivering another devastating blow. But here's my issue. This is the same paternalistic thinking that often causes more harm than good. Chad is making decisions about what Theo can and can't handle, treating him as someone who needs protection rather than someone who deserves truth and agency. It's infantilizing, even if it comes from a place of love. Theo is an adult. Yes, he's been through trauma. Yes, he's neurodivergent. But neither of those things means he can't make his own choices about how to process grief and loss. By keeping this from him, Chad is actually taking away Theo's right to grieve on his own timeline, to say goodbye in his own way, to participate in family decisions about memorials or services. There's also the practical problem. Secrets in Salem don't stay secret. When Theo finds out, he is going to feel betrayed. Not just sad about Stefano, but hurt that people he trusted decided he couldn't be trusted with the truth. That betrayal might actually be more painful than the grief itself. I keep thinking about how this mirrors larger patterns in how people with disabilities are often treated. Their agency is removed for their own good. Decisions are made around them rather than with them, and then everyone is surprised when they feel disrespected and diminished. Chad's heart might be in the right place, but his actions perpetuate harmful dynamics. Theo's journey through grief. When Theo does learn about Stefano's death, we're going to witness grief that's uniquely complicated. Stefano wasn't a simple figure in Theo's life. He was a man who showed Theo unconditional acceptance while also being responsible for countless acts of violence and cruelty. How do you mourn someone who was simultaneously your safe harbor and a source of chaos for everyone around you? I'm predicting we'll see Theo grapple with conflicting emotions. Relief that Stefano's cycle of violence is finally over. Guilt about feeling that relief. Sadness over losing someone who saw him completely. Anger that he didn't get to say goodbye. Confusion about how to remember someone so morally complex. All of these feelings can coexist, and watching Theo navigate them could be some of the most authentic emotional storytelling the show has done in years. What I'm hoping for is that the writers let Theo's grief be messy and nonlinear. Grief doesn't follow a neat path, especially not when you're also processing recent trauma. Some days Theo might be functional, other days the weight of everything might be crushing. That's realistic. That's human. And that's what would make this storyline resonate with viewers who've experienced loss. There's also an opportunity here to explore how Theo's neurodivergence might affect his grieving process. Some people with autism experience and express emotions differently than neurotypical people. That doesn't mean the feelings are less valid or less intensity might just manifest in ways that others don't immediately recognize. If the show handles this thoughtfully, it could be genuinely groundbreaking representation. Kristen's devastation and rejection of comfort. Kristen Demera being devastated by news of Stefano's remains is expected, but her rejection of EJ's comfort is what makes this interesting. These two have always had a complicated relationship vying for Stefano's approval, sometimes allies, sometimes competitors. In this moment when you'd expect grief to bring them together, Kristen is pushing EJ away. My read on this is that accepting comfort from EJ would mean acknowledging a shared vulnerability that Kristen can't afford right now. She's spent her entire life proving she's strong enough, cunning enough, worthy enough to be considered a true Demera. Crying in EJ's arms would feel like weakness, like admitting he's somehow more entitled to grief because he's a biological son. There might also be blame simmering beneath the surface. Did the family do enough to find Stefano? Were there signs of his death they missed? Could this have been prevented? Grief often needs a target, and family members frequently become that target because they're safe, they're not going anywhere, so you can rage at them without fear of total abandonment. I'm also wondering if Kristen knows more than she's letting on. Her devastation seems almost too intense, even for Kristen. Does she have information about Stefano's death that others don't? Was she involved in some way? Kristen has kept bigger secrets than this, and in a moment of confronting her father's death, guilt over hidden knowledge could be surfacing as inconsolable grief. What this means for Kristen's character moving forward is fascinating. Without Stefano as her North Star person she was always trying to impress, always trying to prove herself Toho, but she become. Does she spiral into one of her darker arcs? Or could this loss actually force real growth? History suggests the former, but I'm holding out hope for the latter.